So you got loads of those handfasts. There's one on the roof actually.
Big lumps of rocky called out.
Yeah. So people debate about what they used for, but clearly for hanging something or tethering animals to. And what's really interesting in this cave is that they stop round about here, and there's maybe one or two, but very few going into the back of the cave. So again, looks like whether these are 18th century or 4th century or even older. Looks like people are again using the front of the cave in a different way to how they're using the back of the cave. Certainly some of them must be old, because in the Time Team trench you have handfasts down below the level of the modern surface. So they must have a fair age to them. And some of them are actually broken, so they've lost the kind of central portion. There's not any in this trench, unfortunately. So they're quite fascinating. It's nice to map those in more detail and see where they all are in the other caves.
Yeah, I think we did speculate at one point that they actually match up.
Yeah, some
in
of them
here particularly.
And we're here today with Mike Arrowsmith, who is chair of the Save the Wemyss Ancient Cave Society. Hello Mike, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Lovely sunny day for this.
Yeah, we're sitting on the top of what you've been calling the promontory.
Yeah, it's a bit of land that sticks out above on the cliffs above the caves. It's right next to Macduff Castle, which has stood there in stone from about the 12th, 13th century.
Yeah.
One of the things we're really interested in about this, though, is that in earlier times, particularly in the Iron Age and when the Picts were here, they weren't building castles like this. What they were doing was fortifying easily defendable sites. And the most easily defensible site, and the one that gives absolutely fantastic views, the best views all the way along the coast, so you can see ships coming up and down, boats coming up and down here. You can see all the way over to the Bass Rock and North Berwick Law, the Isle of May, over to Edinburgh. This is the one spot on the end of this promontory where you can see all that with a clear view. So our reasoning is that if they did have a fortification up here, it might not have been where the current castle is, but actually on this promontory.
So very strategically planned.
Superbly strategically planned, yeah, because what you've got here, you've got the caves underneath, which have got the Pictish carvings, which it's increasingly looking like they date to 3rd, 4th century. That's exactly the sort of time when the Picts are up in Aberdeenshire, beginning to occupy these sorts of places. They may have been used earlier on, so before the Picts, a few hundred years before the Picts, these might already have been fortified, but they sort of tended to fall out of use from what we know. But the Picts began to build on these sorts of promontories, and so our theory is they might have done that here. Let's have a look and see if we can find ditches or evidence of occupation or anything up here that might tell us more about what was actually going on.
And am I right in saying the Picts, there's no written recorded history of the Picts? It's very much through their symbols and images they've left behind?
We don't have them in their own words. We have, from Ireland, there are surviving histories, particularly when in things like the life of Columba, who is credited with converting the Picts to Christianity. We have a lot of evidence from the Roman period, and the term the Picts emerges. It's a Roman term, and it's not entirely everybody agrees on what it means, but it could mean the painted people, or the people who liked to draw pictures, for example, in caves. We don't, there's a possibility they were known for their art. But when the Romans first arrived, they were not necessarily hostile to the people here. They might not have had any choice, of course, faced with the Roman army coming up. But certainly by the end of the 3rd century, they were enemies, and they saw the Picts as being barbarians and so on. So the Romans wrote a lot about them, mostly in terms of how savage and warlike they were, and complained that they would sail down the east coast of England and plunder and then sail back again. And the biggest problem is that we don't have anything written in the Pictish language. There are debates over what sort of language that was. It was very probably, I think most people think, something similar to what then went on to produce Welsh and Cornish. So across, if you draw a line from Scotland down through Wales into Cornwall, you've effectively got the same language. And in fact, there are very similar place names in Fife and other Pictish areas that are very similar to what's happening how places are being named elsewhere. So the problem is we don't know what they wrote about themselves. We only have this partial picture of them, and we don't even know what the symbols meant. We can't say for certainty what they're representing. Are they people's names? Are they stating land ownership? Are they recording great events? Are they some sort of even language that you could decipher? We just don't know. And so part of why archaeology is so important for Pictish studies is that really all we have to go on is what we can find in the ground.
So if you like, it's almost like you're decoding history.
It is. It's like it's been described as sort of like you're doing a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle and you've only got 10 or 20 pieces and you don't even have a picture of what the final thing's meant to look like. I mean, that's an exaggeration, obviously, because in the last a few years particularly, but there's been an increasing interest in the Picts as a people. There used to be this idea, taken largely from the Romans, that they were just barbaric. They headhunted their enemies. They dressed in skins, and and everything that we're discovering about them is that actually they were just one of the peoples that lived in that time, and they were no more backwards than anybody else. And so excavations elsewhere have discovered imported pottery and imported glass and things. So East Lowman Hill Forks, about 10 miles inland from us, they've recorded those sorts of things have been found, which show they're trading and they're living the good life. The people up there are not barbarian savages living in holes in the ground. They are every bit as cultured and sophisticated as anybody else.
When you're talking about the Pictish people, it's almost like a consent. You feel a bit of a kinship with them, and I'm wondering where that passion for that history started with yourself.
My passion for history started with my parents stopping off at every historic site whenever we went anywhere and dragging me around it. Of course, I didn't need to be dragged. And I think wherever I've lived, obviously you can tell by the accent, I'm not born and bred Fifer, although I've been here 16, 17 years now. So my passion is really for knowing more about the past, and it's always been about knowing more about the past that's on my doorstep, understanding the place that I'm living. I've lived in quite a few places across the UK, and I suppose I've always got interested in the local history, but also the sort of the unknown history, if you like.
The community history.
The community history, and the community is certainly a very important part of this project and what S.W.A.C.S do, because it's a long stretch of coastline. The best guardians of this are the people who live in the area and use it. And our long-term, what we'd like to see long-term is that the 3/4 of a mile or whatever it is of landscape is a place that is run by local people, that has events for them, and obviously crucially to that is visitors from further afield as well. So that's why we started up our new visitor centre, to try and have a base where visitors from elsewhere can come in, because it's such a beautiful, I mean, just look today, it's such a gorgeous place to be.
It's absolutely stunning.
And there are coachloads of tourists who scoot past and just go and see the big sites in St Andrews, and there's so much more to offer. So our long-term aim is that we can actually start providing employment. And
because all of you we're all volunteers.
We're all volunteers at the moment. We range in age from about 22. Well, actually, no, that's not true. We had an 11-year-old out helping yesterday. But generally, it's sort of people in their early 20s, right up. We have an 80-year-old volunteer out today digging. So it's a whole range of people, whole range of backgrounds. A lot of them are local people who've known the caves and the landscape all their life. There's others that are perhaps a bit more, have a background in archaeology and history, and it all sort of comes together to have an organisation that can do this sort of thing. But yes, there's always been because the caves weren't always seen as, I mean, as you've seen for yourself, when you go in, they're dark places, they're not that inviting. The first people who started writing about them in the 19th century talked about them as cathedrals of light. So completely opposite to how we have them now. It was really the 19th and 20th century industrial activity around here, the coal mining, caused the caves to be sort of forgotten, neglected. They were used for, the miners themselves used to gather in them. It's quite interesting that what the excavations that they're doing in the Cork Cave, which we know was used by miners to play gambling games, we're finding a layer of coal dust. And the idea behind that is that actually this is just coming off their boots. They're walking past here, back to the village on their way back from their shift in the big pits either side, and they're stopping off to play gambling games, and they're leaving their presence in there.
Yeah.
So, but that industrial activity, that mining, caused real structural instability, and caused all sorts of problems with the caves, including cave collapse and so on.
And you've had a very successful last few days with the Archaeology Week.
We did. We started digging here on Thursday. We had an event on Friday night, which was a presentation by the two senior archaeologists working on the site, Joanna Hambley from the S.W.A.C.S Trust and Gordon Noble from Aberdeen University. That it was very lucky for us that it poured with rain that night, otherwise we wouldn't have got everybody into the hall. We had 70 people there for that, which
That's
to
amazing.
have 70 people at a meeting on archaeology dealing with quite difficult ideas sometimes, to have 70 people, a lot of whom were drawn from the immediate area, from the local area, is just that was fantastic. And then we followed that up on Sunday with we probably took 250 people during the course of the day came through, and we were originally planning to run three tours to see the archaeology at the caves, and we ran 9 in the end. So that's the level of how much has been going on,
and the level of interest by the community.
And that's the important thing, because it is all about having a place that is the sense of ownership for local people, because one of the problems that we have here is with vandalism and antisocial behaviour, and it's a big area to cover, it's a big area to look after, and we're not able to patrol it or anything, so it's really in the hands of people who tell us what's going on, and the more local people we can get who get involved tidying up the landscape. I mean, we've done enormous in fact, there's a John here standing next to us, is personally responsible for clearing most of this off the promontory. You wouldn't have been able to get beyond 20 yards away at the beginning of the last week, so people
so a lot of hands,
and people pull their weight in all sorts of different directions and get on with stuff really well. And the scale of what we've actually, it's quite ambitious for us to put on something like this, a week of archaeology, which involves 25 people digging on site, with the organising the meeting on Friday, the visitor centre. It's a lot of work, and somehow we've managed to pull it off, and we've got new members and new volunteers as a result, so it's all, next time we can do it bigger and better.
How can the local community help you? Because I know that you can join as a member to offer some support.
Yes, you can join as a member. To be honest, the membership's only £5. We're not going to get rich off that. It's really about what little, or if people can spend every waking hour out here, we'll gladly have them. If they can spend 5 minutes at the visitor centre just making the tea or chatting to people as they come in, we'll have them as well. But really it's about a lot of what's going to be important to us is connections that we have with schools, so the new generations of kids in the area understand what they've got on their doorstep and respect it. I mean, as I said, people do really value them in the village. 99% of people in the local area really respect the site and look after it, but it does only take 2 or 3 people, and they're very, very vulnerable. So the next step that we're looking at is what we can do in terms of actually protecting the caves permanently, without denying people the right to go in and look at things and
but
use
protecting
them
them sensitively.
But protecting them sensitively, so that may mean things like new gates, which are open to the so they're open to the public and then closed at vulnerable times, and all that takes a lot of money. It means getting a lot of agencies together that can give us the money, that we have to get the permission from the landowners to do it, and permission from Historic Environment Scotland, because most of it is a protected historic monument. So there's lots of different people to get together. The Five Coast and Countryside Trust are involved, because the coastal path runs along this site. So all those links are required. We have fantastic support from the local councillors in the area. MSPs, MPs are all keen on what we're doing, and because I think like us, they see that this is an area that deserves better attention, and it deserves, and the people here can benefit from it, not just in the enjoyment of the area, but actually if we can start bringing money in wherever possible. We try to use local firms, almost
local
all
makers,
so all the work on the guide hall that we just turned into our visitor centre, we tried wherever possible. We use 2 local businesses who actually live in the same road, so that's how local we can. That's what we're trying to do. We want to. It'd be nice to say that somebody should take this into ownership and spend lots of money on it, but nobody's going to do that without people agitating and fighting for it, and that's what we're trying to do, and proving that it can be a real asset to the community.
So almost like when the Picts were here and they had their community here, you're now